Pub Sports Radio is very excited to announce the dates for Pubapalooza 4. The most exciting weekend of the gambling year. Round 1 of March Madness. It's all going down in San Antonio, Texas at the Southtown 101, Thursday the 20th till Sunday the 23rd. It's going down, baby.
Scheduled events every day that weekend. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's all going down in Southtown 101. Come hang out with some of your favorite Pub Sports Radio personalities.
Oof, I can't wait. Meet us in Texas, baby. It's going.
Wide open Torrence! Oh, baby! Touchdown! How do you leave the best receiver in the NAIA that wide open?
You show, and that's what we do! Cat!
You're proud of me? And it's caught! Oh my goodness! Troy Torrence comes down with it!
Welcome all to Bankroll Blitz, the Divisional Round breakdowns. 7 games left in our NFL season. When we're done capping these tonight, there will only be 3 games left in the NFL. And this is not the time to lament. This is the time to take advantage of what we got left. Work as hard as we can on these games. I know it's sad that the season is almost over, but let's focus on getting paid in full right here, right now. Troy Torrence, how are you, my man?
I was doing a lot better before you brought up. We only have like 3 games left. Fucking A. It went so fast.
It went so fast, too fast. And I started early because I had CFL, so to have this.
And you had preseason action, which you fucking crushed.
Crushed CFL, too. The only thing I didn't crush was college football, down 1.14 units now at the end of the season with 1 game left. So I'm not going to get depending on how I bet that last game, probably not going to get the profit in all sports, but things are going well right here, right now. Great to see all the cappers in the chat. We got Old E, Smooth Blue, Chill Will. What up, Chill Will, my guy? Give my love to Lil Domo and the fam. We got Dougie Wise, I Am Destro, Spenny Penny Bombs, Rob McMahon, Mac Beavers, Big Scott, Nutflush Allen, D Jenkins, Slatsy, Elliot Jameson in the house. Great to see all of you guys. It was a tough week for you, Troy. It opened up in difficult fashion with the Texans Chargers under. I mean, that was just as bad of a beat as you're ever going to have in your life. It's going to be up there. Now we just move on past them. We both were hurt with the Broncos. I was going over the stats for that game, of course, as we're preparing that. I don't know how that game was such a low, ended 31-7. With the amount of yards that were picked up by both squads, it was a shocking result for that to get to the under. You cashed the Eagles-Ravens money line. You cashed the Eagles-Ravens double result, plus 120. You also cashed heavily on the Rams, plus 3, and the Rams money line. The issue was the Buccaneers was a heavy, heavy investment for you that cost you. But you are still healthy in the black overall. Plus 7.69 units. I know that's not where you want to be, but there's still time to get back into double digits and get to back where you belong with at least 4 or 5% ROI. How did you feel about the week that was?
I feel like I'm seeing the board incredibly well. I've been feeling that way for about 8 to 10 weeks at this point, and looking at 7.69 is extremely frustrating. But at the same time, when you go back through these games, which I did, at the end of the season last week, I feel very proud of what I was able to do this year. It's like this, Jimmy. I mean, you don't want to be results oriented. This is 1.78% ROI is not what I'm shooting for. It's not my target. I'm underachieving. But at the same time, it's like you just make the call. You just have to dodge a spade on the river. You're trying to dodge a flush on the river. You got 76% equity. I'm going to make that call every single time. I'm going to make the same play, I feel like. And in the long run, it'll be much more profitable.
Well, I believe in you, and you've made me a better gambler. This week was the perfect example. Moving towards adding the money line parlays. Was the reason why I made money this week. 4 and 2 plus 1.89 units. I lost with the Broncos plus 8.5. Cashed easily with Green Bay, Philadelphia under 46. Cashed with the Ravens, Eagles parlay, and then the Ravens double result with the Eagles at plus 121. I lost with the Buccaneers. Got it back with the Rams plus 3. Also had a great week live betting. I'm excited to attack the card. Kent Davies, RVD 420. We got Lucky Power ready to rock. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We have 4 enormous football games. Troy, are you ready to attack?
Let's do it.
We start Saturday, January 18th, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, of the AFC Divisional Playoffs. Houston Texans 10-7, 5-4 on the road. The Kansas City Chiefs 15-2, 8-0 at home. We're at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, Missouri. 27 Fahrenheit, mostly cloudy, 10 miles per hour. So there are gusts that are supposed to be quite a bit heavier than the 10 miles per hour. The snow is supposed to stop earlier in the day. So there is not at this point supposed to be any snow, but it will be very cold. Got DJ 100 grand in the house, Nasty Nate, ready to roll with us. I've moved on every game except for Ravens Bills, and I'm nervous about my action, which I guess is par for the course with me. The Houston Texans are plus 8 right now, minus 106. They opened up at plus 7.5 with almost no vig. So we have a half-point move towards the Kansas City Chiefs. On the total, we have a 42. Now, there are 41.5s at a lot of books. I'm looking at a 42 juice to the under at minus 110. We've got a 1 cent move towards the under. When we get into the cash flow for this one, 41% of the tickets and 47% of cash are on the Texans. 80% of tickets and 66% cash is on the over. So 20 and 34 on the under. Nufflush Allen says Texans are getting rolled. And Gorky, our man Gorky with a $2 dono, blessing our action. Rams team total over 20.5. Kansas City, Baltimore Lions money line for our guy Gorky. Gorky, thank you for the dono, my friend. So I have moved on the Houston Texans plus 8.5 at minus 110. I've also moved on the under 42.
Ooh,
110. I moved on both of those spots. Dennis Garcia says, on one hand, I think KC rolls, but they don't cover this range. I prefer the over. Let's talk this one out. We're going to start with the Houston Texans passing offense this year. And all of these stats include any team that was playing in the wild card. 20th in the league at 210.4 yards per game through the air. I think that they needed a confidence builder badly last week, and they received it. Rushing offense, 14th in the league, 115.4 yards per game. Their red zone offense is a problem. It's a problem. Fortunately, they're dealing with a Kansas City Chiefs team who have had red zone issues at times. Overall in the season, they've had pretty good numbers, but they've had issues at times. Red zone offense, 26th in the league, 49.2%. Third down offense, 21st in the league at 37.6%. It's not a very good offense. Pass defense is 6th in the league, 201.6 yards per game through the air. They allow rushing defense. They allow 110.4 yards per game on the ground. That's 11th. Their red zone defense is 24th. They allow touchdowns 62.2% of the time. Their third down defense, though, is third. 35.5% of the time they allow conversions, and they're 4th in the league, averaging 2.9 sacks per game. We got Spoons Bets in the house. LJ from H-Town knows everything about Houston. He says the under 42 is solid. Nufflashan says, don't be fooled what your eyes saw last week. Texans were not good on offense. I know they weren't good on offense. We'll go over these numbers here in a second. These two teams met right here in Kansas City in week 16 in a 27-19 Chiefs victory. I was on the Chiefs double result. I was on the Chiefs minus 3.5. I was bullish on the Chiefs in that situation. That closed with the Chiefs as a 3.5-point favorite. And now we have an 8.5. Doesn't that seem like an alarmingly extreme change from what we just saw in week 16? I couldn't get past that. In that game, each team averaged 5.4 yards per play. The Chiefs won the turnover battle 2-0, which proved to be the difference in the game. The Texans come off an impressive 32-12 home victory over the Chargers in the wild card round. Now, yes, their offense didn't look very good, but they did put up 429 yards of offense. They outgained the Chargers 429 to 261. CJ Stroud, 22 of 33 for 282 yards, touchdown, interception. He also ran 6 times for 42 yards. Nico Collins caught 7 for 122 and a touchdown. And Joe Mixon ran 25 times for 106 yards and a touchdown, caught a 14-yard pass. He also lost a fumble. The offense did look better than it had for weeks. 7 of 16 on 3rd and 4th down. Their struggles in the red zone continued where they were just 2 of 4. Their defense was excellent throughout. They held the Chargers to 3 of 12 on 3rd and 4th down and offered them just 1 failed red zone attempt. It was impressive. Pass rush is dynamite. We know that. 4 sacks, 9 quarterback hits. And the secondary proved that they could still do an excellent job despite not having safeties Jalen Petrie and Jimmy Ward, who are done for the season with injuries. Stingley looked phenomenal, as he has often this year with 2 interceptions. Kamari Lassiter is just an absolute monster. He's such a young star. And Eric Murray, Lassiter, Murray, and then Stingley had 2 interceptions. So they had 4 altogether. We know their defense is strong. 4th in success rate allowed, 5th in EPA per play, 2nd in points per quality possession allowed. So I was sitting with this a lot today. Last year, the Texans destroyed the Browns at home in the wild card round 45-14. And we all know what happened next. They traveled to take on the number 1 seed Ravens, and they got killed 34-10. I imagine that D'Amico Ryans is going to be talking about that often with his football team this week. We've been here. We've done this. We went into a huge game against the number 1 seed with confidence, and we got blown out. What's the difference this year? What's going to be the difference this year? So I took a look at that Ravens team from last year and compared it to the Chiefs team from this year, and it's a pretty easy place to start. The Ravens had a plus 203 points differential last year. This Chiefs team had a plus 79. That is a monstrous difference. Now, look, the Chiefs team had a better record than the 23-24 Ravens team. This Chiefs team knows how to win 1-score games. They know how to step up. And Troy, as my witness, saw me backing the Chiefs nonstop for the last 4 weeks of the year. Well, I've stopped. I think the Texans can keep this a 1-score game. Now, there are some bad stats. Here is the first one. Teams to win as an underdog, or trends, I should say. Teams to win as an underdog in the wild card round are 7-28 straight up, 16-19 against the spread in the divisional round over the past 20 years. 16-19, I can work with that. Since 2011, those teams are 2-20 straight up, and they're 10-12 against the spread. 10-12 against the spread.
Now, Jimmy, what about ATS over 7 points?
That changes things. And we're going to get into the dogs of that number. Is that in this game, or is that? Here we go. Well, yes. I mean, I only have certain stats revolving around the 7.5, and those teams who are 7.5 points or more as favorites, straight up, have won 18 straight games. They haven't lost since dating back to 2019-2020 playoffs. That 18-game streak of straight-up victories of teams that are over 7.5-point favorites is the longest streak at any point in the Super Bowl era. We're going to get into some of the Chiefs stats here in a little bit, but CJ Stroud, there's a lot of talk about Stroud in outdoor stadiums. He's 5-6 straight up, passer rating of 83.8. He's only averaging 6.6 yards a pass, in his career in outdoor stadiums. All of these are lower than what he usually is. He's only completing 59% of his passes. Look, these aren't the best stats. But this just is not the Chiefs team that I expect to win by margin. Now, against the Steelers, I was on the Chiefs and I was on the double result. I expected them to win by margin. And today I thought, who would I bet if the Texans were playing the Steelers in a neutral site right now? And it would be the Texans. And when I came to that conclusion, I moved on the Texans plus the points. And I moved on the under 42. I will also say, with all 5 bets I've made, I'm not really bullish on any of them. There's not one where I'm like, this is a slam spot. I'm just making what I believe to be the sharpest moves available. We'll talk about the Chiefs next. Let's start with the Texans. Troy, my friend, take it away. The Houston Texans Do they have a shot at Arrowhead Stadium on Saturday, January 18th?
I feel like maybe I just let you go here because I don't know if I could talk about one without talking about the other. But I love where you took this right out of the gate, Jim. Talking about the market, comparing it to the Ravens game of last year. I mean, we're right down the same alley, pretty much. Trying to get from 3.5 to 8.5 was almost impossible. I have a lot to say, but not so much about the Texans. I talked about them a lot last week. This is a much harder team to trust, especially offensively on the road, and especially against the untouchable Chiefs, right? But they have the pieces defensively, the grit factors, and huge upside with 2 elite pass rushers. They're first in pass rush win rate and second in run stop win rate. That's the best defensive line in the league. 2 elite cornerbacks, and Lassiter and Stingley are elite cornerbacks. An elite linebacker. So you have an elite player, at least one at every level of the field. 1 in the secondary, 1 at the linebacker position, and 2 on the defensive line. The issue has been with the offense this season. We discussed Stroud in depth. He's having his sophomore slump. They lost talent at the wide receiver position injury. That's a huge problem. But the biggest problem of all is their offensive line, who's grading out towards the bottom of the NFL, no matter what metric you want to look at, which is a huge concern here, right? Because we know Spagnuolo is going to be able to scheme up pressure. So hopefully our guy C.J. Stroud learned from what he did last week, put the ball in harm's way twice, and especially once. There was 1 interception he had in the first game that is basically unacceptable. And you talked about the first time these two teams met. I mean, it was neck to neck up until the third quarter. It was a 1-point game.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget how it shouldn't have been a tie game. Was there a missed extra point?
I was going over that game today.
I think there might have been a missed extra point. No, man, it was like a tie game halfway through the third quarter. Both teams were 7 for 13 on third down. You touched on it. Both teams averaged 5.4 yards per play, which is right around league average, about 1/10 of a yard under league average. The Chiefs, this is the difference. Obviously, the 2 turnovers, huge difference. And the Chiefs went 3 for 5 in the red zone. The Texans only went 1 for 3. But despite all that, if you go back, I watched the first 3 quarters of that game, first full 3 quarters of that game. The game flipped when Dalton Schultz on third down dropped the pass, basically in the Chiefs side of the field. And that would have given them the lead because they would have been in field goal range. That could have led to a touchdown. Who knows what happens from there? But then the bottom kind of fell out for the Texans. And I just kind of agree with you. I couldn't get to. I guess we could dive into the Chiefs now. Let's get into that side.
Let's do it. The Kansas City Chiefs. I have enjoyed capping them enormously this year. This has just been a type of season that I really have never seen before. I've never seen a team get so fortunate so often and cover these spreads and end up as the number 1 seed in the AFC when that was the most important thing, was to ensure that the Ravens played the Bills and that they could just sit back and watch. And they accomplished all that despite performing very underwhelmingly until late in the season. Passing offense, 13th in the league, 222.4 yards per game. Rushing offense, 22nd, 105.3 yards per game. The red zone offense, as I said, it's been a problem. It's been a problem often this year. 22nd in the league at 53.9%. Their third down offense, though, has been strong all year. Mahomes can do some magic there. Third in the league. They convert 48.5% of the time. Their passing defense, 18th. They allow 218.8 yards per game through the air. The rushing defense, 5th. They allow 101.8 through the ground, on the ground. Their their red zone defense has been strong all year, 8th in the league. They allow touchdowns 51.9% of the time, and their third down defense is 27th. They allow conversions 43.3% of the time, and they were 18th in sacks, getting 2.3 per game. So now we begin this story. Can the Chiefs become the first team in NFL history to win 3 straight Super Bowls? And they had the bye. They didn't play their starters in week 18. So they haven't played a real game since their week 17 Christmas Day 29-10 victory at Pittsburgh. That victory was their most complete of the season, but that's a long time to have off. This is a deep, experienced, healthy squad. When I think about the Lions in their similar situation, I think the fact that they had to go all out in week 18 is going to be very helpful for them. I think the Chiefs have been off a little long to keep that edge because they were being questioned by everyone throughout that streak. They turned it on at the end of the year, and they got that seed, and now they've been off for a long time. The Chiefs finished 11-0 in one-score games, but this is the first year that we've seen this offensive line be a weak spot, a legitimate weak spot. They're going up against an elite pass rush in the Texans. This is a Chiefs team that did not break 30 points in the game all season long. And we have the home teams in the divisional round coming off of a bye. And it makes so much sense to me. And it makes so much sense that I had, and it took a while for me to bet the Texans. This has gone a point or a point and a half, sorry, a half point or a point against them at all the books. But I couldn't get over this stat. This stat makes so much sense to me. That teams are, since 2003, are 33-42-1 against the spread coming off of a bye. How can they keep that edge, that compete, that Dan Campbell's being able to keep with the Lions all season long, whether or not they were in San Francisco in a meaningless game? They had their compete. The Chiefs let go of their compete, were shut out in week 18 in a meaningless game. They've been off since Christmas Day. As a favorite, here you go, Troy. I knew I had it here somewhere. So these teams coming off of a bye, in home teams in Division 1 coming off a bye, are 3-5 against the spread since 2020. And then as a favorite of 7 points or more off of a bye, it's the same number. It's 17-24-1 against the spread. That's 42%. It doesn't matter how you look at it. They're not covering enough of the time to have confidence in them. And I truly believe that the Lions are in a much better position than the Chiefs. Now, they aren't health-wise. I just mean the compete level being up and ready to go for every game all year and then getting the bye. Another part with this total, it will be the lowest number for any playoff game in Patrick Mahomes' career. Now, that is if it stays under 43.5. Texans plus 8.5 and the under 42. I was concerned coming to the show with the action already in place that I would lose confidence, that I would be nervous. I like my action. I stand by my action. I've talked it out publicly. I'm ready to go to war. War is a bad term for the people who actually have to fight. I'm ready to gamble and put my risk factor involved. I'm ready to risk on these two bets. Take it away, Troy, the Kansas City Chiefs.
I think it's a great spot to take about. You broke this game down fantastically, Jim. And you've been all over this Chiefs team, whether it be fading him or buying him at the right time. So very happy to be on the same side as you. I just couldn't disagree more with the general sentiment towards this team that I see a lot of the chat. And I know, Jimmy, you still feel this way to some extent, that people love this team to three-peat when three-peat has never been done in the NFL before. And I personally couldn't disagree more. There's 4 variables that lead me to that conclusion. First of all, this team could have easily been 9-8, 10-7 this year. We all know this. They beat the Chargers by a doink field goal at the end of the game. The Raiders muffed the snap. They were in position to win the game. Carolina, they had to kick a buzzer beater field goal. The Broncos, they blocked the game-winning field goal. The Bucs, they went to OT. It came down to a coin flip. Who got the ball first? They won. Atlanta, no pass interference in the end zone. Clear as day. Cincinnati, probably the right call. Pass interference on 3rd and 26 or 4th and 26. Game-saving PI call on a triple coverage ball. And then we all know back to week 1 when they beat Baltimore by a half an inch, when Baltimore was nowhere near the offense that they've grown to. A lot of inside zone, inside runs there, completely different. I really believe we're going to see Ravens Chiefs, and I can't wait to break that game down because I have a lot to say. I'm already kind of prepping my notes for that game, but all 8 of those games literally came down to the final play of the game. Extremely fortunate to be the number 1 seed in the AFC. They're nowhere near the best football team in the NFL. And I say that because Patrick Mahomes, this is night and day what he's been doing to this season versus the rest of his career. And it's likely because, like you said, how are you going to stay motivated, especially to beat a team by 8 points by margin like this in the NFL where there's so much parity? I think that this team kind of rested on their morals this offseason. How could you not after winning 2 Super Bowls? How can you maintain that edge and that competitive spirit when you just won back-to-back Super Bowls, the biggest achievement in all of sports? It's hard to do that. And Patrick Mahomes, his numbers show that he did not come into this season like he has in the past because he has the lowest passer rating in his career at 93.5. 5 of his last 7 games, he posted a passer rating below average. So I think about the thought of this offense coming together at the right times. Well, the last 7 games, that definitely doesn't show in Patrick Mahomes' numbers. Maybe it shows somewhere else that I'm not looking. Lowest yards per attempt in his career at 6.8. 6 of his last 7 games, he posted a yards per average below the league average. The highest pressure to sack rate in his career, and that's by far. He's at 17% this season. His career average prior to the season, 11%. It's the first year in his career where he threw for less than 4,000 yards. And I don't want to put it all on Patrick Mahomes because you've touched on a point that I really believe is the weak spot of this offense, and it's their tackle position. And it's a terrible matchup when you're looking across you and you see Anderson Jr. and Hunter lined up, 2 of the best pass rushers in the league. So I really think that, that's 3, and I can go to 4 too. I could talk about the defense and how it's a little bit overrated. League average in terms of pass rush and run stop win rate. They're really bad on third down. They got outgained in yards per play by the Broncos, the Texans, the Browns, the Chargers, the Raiders twice. Or no, the Raiders by 2 yards per play, their last matchup. The Panthers, the Bills, the Broncos again, the Bucks by over 1.5 yards per play. All of those teams, I mean, that's like their last 10 games. They got outgained in terms of yards per play. And it's not like they're leading these games. Like you could understand a team that jumps out to a massive lead. They let up, they run the ball. The defense is built, there's stuff in the box to stop the run and force punts. That would make sense. This is not the case with the Chiefs. The Chiefs, to me, and I mean, I'm probably not surprising anybody in the chat when I say this, is an absolute fade or pass. My bet sizing is going to increase if the Chiefs advance in this round, which I do believe they will, unless some type of information comes across my desk, some type of film that I don't currently have available to me. But to me, it's time to deploy the martingale theory and fading this Chiefs team. I don't think they're going to be able to three-peat. I think they're going to lose next round, and I'm not. It's hard to say that they're going to lose a game where they're 8.5-point favorites, but I don't think it's a lock by any means.
So I think that the bye and taking week 18 off is going to be enormously helpful next week. Once they get that sharpness back, if they're challenged here, now maybe they just deliver because there's legitimacy from all these comments in the chat. You know, Pennybomb saying Chiefs did enough to win, never showed more than they needed to, and went 15-2. Dennis Garcia says, I agree, but it's Kansas City. At no point in the regular season did it feel like they were out of second gear. Look, I agree with all of that. I just really believe that the Texans can make this a 1-score game and that the Chiefs will take care of business in that 1-score game. Now, this could be a blowout. We have Nutflush Allen saying that this will be the same, story as the Bills-Broncos, which is possible. Here we go. Troy, your official action.
Yeah. People are just the magical unicorn fairy dust bullshit with this Chiefs team. It's hard for me. It's hard for me to read some of the stuff I do in the chat. I get frustrated. Because this team has been more than lucky to not only have won 2 straight Super Bowls, but to be the AFC champs right now, to have the bye, insane. It's insane. And you know what? Like I was texting Jimmy about this. Like if they were to play the Ravens or the Bills, especially the Ravens at home in Arrowhead, I would put the line at 2.5. If I knew for a fact it was the officiating was going to be called accurately, every play guaranteed, the officiating was going to be 100% accurate, dude, I would put the biggest bet of my entire life on the Ravens times 2.
Well,
I got the Texans plus 8.5. I don't think I said that. Texans
and do you have anything with the total?
No, nothing with the total, but I was looking heavily at the under. But the history of this market is what's keeping me off. The last 11 games in the regular season, the last 11 games that had a spread between 7.5 and 8.5, or 7.5 and 9.5, basically between the key of 7 and 10, 11 straight overs, 3 straight overs in the playoffs. It's just, I don't know. I don't know why it's hard to trust this number. I don't know if it's because this is telling us backdoor ability. I don't know exactly. I definitely like the under. I think the matchup screams under, and I might get there. I feel like I got a little bit of time. Oh, it is already down to 41.5 at some shops, huh?
It is. Yeah, there was an interesting run on the total today. This total was minus 114 to the over 42, and this was at 8 or 9 in the morning. So since then, there's been a 10-cent move to the under at 42. At that point, I decided to move on it. I moved on it today when I saw the move back to the under, and I thought it was going to continue happening. So we'll see. See if Troy adds the total. That is our game 1 of the divisional round series. We roll on to game 2 here. NFC Divisional Playoffs. Washington Commanders 12-5, 5-3 on the road at the Detroit Lions 15-2, 7-2 at home. We're at Ford Field in Detroit, Michigan. This total is at 55. It opened up at 55.5. Now, some books did open it up at 56. This offshore that I believe is the sharpest opened up at 55.5. Started getting juiced towards the under right away. Moved to 54.5. When it first went to 54.5, it was juiced to the under. That didn't last long. Overaction came in. We now have a 55 at a pick'em. This one makes me obviously uncomfortable because the number was set at a point where how could you not bet the under immediately in a playoff game? And so I did. I bet the under immediately. And it's not sitting well with me. I'm nervous about it. There's a lot of cappers on the under, 47% of the tickets, 44% of the cash in front of it. As you know, that's a rarity. That's even close to 50-50. 68% of the tickets and 73% of the cash is on the Detroit Lions. We've seen the line move in their direction. There are 10s that are juiced to the Commanders. I see one at minus 120. Here at this offshore, it's at minus 118. But this opened up at 8.5 as a pick'em. So a clear move towards these Detroit Lions. We'll start with the Commanders. Their passing offense, 16th in the league, 218.5 yards per game. Their rushing offense, 3rd, 150.1 yards per game. Red zone offense is 8th in the league. Jaden Daniels shows the poise of a veteran. 61.8% of the time they're scoring touchdowns. So their third down offense is 6th. They convert 46.1% of the time. Their passing defense has been strong all year, 3rd in the league at 189.1 yards per game, but their rushing defense has been a problem. Didn't seem to hurt them too much against Tampa, which I think was a mistake by Tampa. Rushing defense, 27th in the league, 135.4 yards per game they allow. The red zone defense has been a problem. They're 23rd. They allow touchdowns 60.7% of the time. Their third down defense is average, 15th. They convert 38.9% of the time. 13th in sacks at 2.4, but I'm not concerned about their pass rush whatsoever. This will also be the 3rd consecutive road game for the Commanders. Very difficult task. Commanders coming off their 6th straight win. An impressive 23-20 victory at Tampa. Jaden Daniels is 24-35 for 268 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also led the running game with 13 carries for 36 yards. This running game has been a real problem. Robinson is doing nothing at all. Eckler's come back, but he can't run in between the hash marks. Scary Terry led with 7 catches for 89 yards. De'Ami Brown had a monster game with 5 catches for 89 yards and a touchdown. They went 11 of 20 on 3rd and 4th down, and their red zone play, though, continued to struggle. And that's what the Commanders do. They convert 3rd downs, they win the time of possession, and they fail in the red zone. They went 2 of 5 in the red zone. You know, their defense didn't look that good against the Bucs. They allowed the Bucs to go 5 of 9 on 3rd down, 2 of 3 in the red zone. What they did very well was they kept Mayfield off the field. I'm sure that is Dan Quinn's number one plan, is we got to keep Goff off the field. The Commanders had the ball for 35 minutes and 26 seconds of the game. The pass rush was quiet, 1 sack, 2 quarterback hits. There were some injuries. Deron Payne, finger injury, and Jordan McGee, a hamstring injury. They're both listed as questionable this week, but both expected to play. Ben Sinnott left the game with a shoulder injury, but he's not even on the report. And then we have the teams that win as an underdog in the wild card round. We just talked about this same angle with the Texans, and it's not good. They're 7-28 straight up, 16-19 against the spread in the divisional round. Now, that's not so bad. 10-12 against the spread since 2011. That's not so bad. 2-20 straight up. That's not good. The Washington Commanders, Troy, your feelings on them?
I mean, not much has changed with my handicap on this team. I made a video about this. We talked about this last time on Bankroll Blitz. They've had the second easiest strength of schedule in the NFL. Jesus Christ, I sound like a broken record. I feel like I could recite this in my sleep at this point. They're coming off 6 straight wins, and they have 7 wins this season that have been on the final play of the game. Absolute buzzer beaters, from the walk-off doink-in field goals to Hail Marys. It just never stops with this team. They're 0-4, except for this is the first win versus a playoff team in the Bucs, who had their starting quarterback. I talk about the offensive line and how that's the biggest weakness. And I feel like that the Lions defensive line, I'm not going to get into the Lions. See, that's a little bit hard for me because I kind of talk about the two sides in tandem. So just taking one.
No, you can though, dude. If you want to jump in, it's all good.
Yeah. And we've already seen some of the regression. I know I hammered home last week. Almost all of their fourth down success has been one of the most fraudulent metrics I've ever seen. Go back and find. I couldn't go back. I went back 5-6 years, and there was nobody even close to an 80% fourth down conversion rate in the NFL. And almost all of these fourth down conversions have been Jaden Daniels scrambles. This past week, they went 3 of 5, which is 60% in the red zone. So there's a little bit of regression. And I still think we have more regression to come for this fourth down offense. And the offensive line, this is a turnstile offensive line, especially versus competent pass rushes. And I'm not saying that Detroit Lions are a competent pass rush, but we know that they could scheme pressure. We know that they're going to bring a blitz, a lot like the Buccaneers did. And defensively versus top offenses, which we know this Lions team is a top offense. They played so far. This team has played against the Eagles, the Ravens, the Bengals, and the Bucs, and they've allowed, even with this most recent result of 20 points allowed to the Bucs, they still have allowed over an average of 30 points per game to those teams. Their run defense, 29th in the NFL per PFF. Their coverage rate, 27th in the NFL per PFF. Absolutely primed for this Lions team to pick them apart. And you look at this last game that they just played. I mean, they were down by 4 in the fourth quarter. Baker with an unforced fumble. We know Jared Goff isn't going to have an unforced fumble. We know that he doesn't put the ball in harm's way like Baker does. And Baker really didn't do that besides that one fumble. And if you go back and watch the film on that play, that might have been a touchdown. I think he had big eyes. His eyes started bulging out of his head because he's seen absolutely. It would have been one-on-one with the safety. Jalen McMillan on a jet sweep, one-on-one with the safety. It would have been a big play. I think his eyes got a little bit big. He fumbled the ball. We won't see that out of Jared Goff. The Bucs outgained this team by 1.4 yards per play. We're held to just 5.1 yards per play, and that's that's below league average. So I wasn't very impressed with this Commanders team on either side of the ball. Washington went 2 for 5 in the red zone, and I talked about 3 for 5 on fourth down. This is another game that they should have lost, and I expect them to lose this game coming up here.
I expect them to lose this game here as well. But still, I haven't figured out a way to get involved at this point. And I'm hoping that will change here as we break these down. So let's talk about the Lions a little more. Passing offense, second in the league, 263.2 yards per game through the air. The rushing offense is fifth. They put up 146.4 yards per game on the ground. Red zone offense, second. They score touchdowns 69.4% of the time. Their third down offense, fourth. They convert 47.6% of the time. Their passing defense has been an issue all year, but they get great safety play that kind of helps the issues that they sometimes have at corner. And their teams against them are always behind and throwing the ball. So the fact that they allow 244 yards per game isn't a statement on their defense of any kind. Rush defense, fourth at 98.4 yards per game on the ground. Red zone defense, seventh. They allow touchdowns 50.9% of the time. And their third down defense is the best in the league. And it's been all year long, despite all the injuries. Now Anzalone coming back is just a monstrous addition. We're going to talk about another big addition here in a second. 32.4% of the time they allow conversions. And they're 23rd in sacks with 2.2 sacks per game. You know, that whole pass rush got injured, and it's, you know, even at 2.2, they're doing pretty well. The job that Dan Campbell has done, Ben Johnson, and then Aaron Glenn is spectacular. You know, number 1 seed in the NFC. They received a much needed bye week. David Montgomery expected to be available for the Lions. We don't know how much he'll play, but he will, at least at first, you know, give Gibbs a chance to rest for a second. This Washington defense, we talked about them ranking 27th, allowing 135.4 yards per game, but they're worse than that. They allow the 3rd highest yards per carry in the NFL at 4.87, the 6th highest EPA rush EPA per rush, and then 29th in PFF run defense grade. The last time they saw the Lions defense, they completely shut down the Vikings. Now, a lot of the luster has been taken off of that because of what the Rams just did to the Vikings, but the Vikings had 9 points, 142 passing yards, and 14 first downs. The total is at 55.5. So the last playoff game that closed with a total of 55.5 or more was in 2021 between the Browns and the Chiefs. Mahomes versus Baker Mayfield. Final score was 22-17. I found it impossible not to bet the under. I just couldn't help myself. I just bet it right away. I just couldn't stop myself. It's just so high, and that makes me really uncomfortable because obviously they're putting at a number where they're going to know they're going to get a ton of action on the under. I almost wish they opened it at 54, and then it went up to 55.5, and I could say, oh, okay, you know. But opening it up at 56, knowing they're going to get a ton of action on the under, makes me very uncomfortable. And we talked about the home teams in the divisional round coming off a bye, 33-42-1 against the spread, 44%. That's since 2003. Since 2020, they're 3-5 against the spread. And as 7+ points favorites off of a bye, they're 17-24-1. I don't think that's going to affect these Lions because of the way they've been revved up by Dan Campbell. They've been revved up. They needed the bye. They got 1 week off to rest and regroup, unlike the Chiefs, who've been off since Christmas Day. I want to use the Lions. I'm just not sure how to use them. I mean, is the double result would have to be probably a parlay piece. Now, we did a great job of that last week using the Ravens double result as a parlay piece. Right now, the Lions double result here is at -170. Take it away, Troy. The Detroit Lions, and how are you betting this one?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on the total before I forget. So totals where you have 40% or more of the bets on the over. This season, I'm going to narrow it down to this season because we've seen these total markets completely flip over the past 365 days where it's just so skewed towards cash flow on the over. And, I keep track of this. When 40% or more of the bets are on the over, it's happened 14 times this season. We have hundreds of games in the sample. 14 times only. That's insane. When 40% of the bets are on the under, excuse me, I apologize. On the under, 40% or more of the bets are on the under. 10-4 to the over. Blew my mind, but this is a playoff football game. I'm not saying the database and the history of applies. These are playoff markets, not the traditional markets, but I would agree with you. First of all, I don't believe in the Commanders' offense and what we've seen on 4th down conversions. We just seen them struggle against the Bucs defense, and I think that this Lions team is a better version of the Bucs, whether it be on offense, great offensive line, ability to run the ball, competent quarterback, ability to have explosive plays. Only the Lions do it better offensively. Mediocre defense in the Bucs to a good defense in the Lions. At this point, how are we going to keep sliding the Lions when they keep posting up good numbers? Not only are they putting up good numbers numerically on paper, but you look at the PFF grade and you look at like what Amik Robertson did against Justin Jefferson on tape. You just can't take it away from them. Like they have playmakers on defense. Jack Campbell, Anzalone, Corey Joseph, Kirby Joseph. You got Brian Branch, Terrion Arnold, who I think is probably the weakest of all the links. But they have a lot of playmakers, even on the defensive line with Zadarius Smith, right? And Reader. Like there's guys that can make plays on this defense. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I feel like there's a good chance this one goes over, especially with my expectation that the Commanders fail on fourth down, because we'll see them, just like they did in the first possession against the Bucs, drive the field and probably fail on fourth down conversion at least once this game. I think it's going to be more than that. And like I was saying, this Lions team is just the Buccaneers on steroids, whether it be on offense, on defense. They actually blitz at the same rate as the Bucs. Now, the one thing that is a little bit concerning is, we're going to get man defense mostly out of the Lions, where we got a lot of zone defense, which makes it harder for Jane Daniels to run. I was talking about it on the live stream that I like Jane Daniels under his rushing prop. And it was because we're going to see a lot of blitz. They had 3 spies. I think we only have 2 spies in the equation this week, which makes things a little bit different, even though they didn't use Yaya Diaby really as a spy. But Levante David, he's a great benchmark to see what he did as a spy against Jane Daniels is exactly what Jack Campbell and Anzalone could do. They're all 3 of them run the exact same 40 time. They all are extreme. They're all within a tenth of a point on their shuttle time. They're very similar in talent and stature. I feel like we're going to see a very similar story. Now, it's going to look a little bit different because you got man versus zone, but I still think that this Lions defense is going to be able to make some plays. And why do I think this totals at 55.5? I don't think it's as much of the Commanders. What it's telling me is that the Lions are going to be able to get whatever they want. We know they're pretty much guaranteed to put up 30. I think their team total is like 34.5 right now. I think the Lions are going to absolutely smack this team. I don't think we're going to guarantee. I'm not guaranteed that the Commanders crack 20 in this game. I think the Lions are going to put up 30 plus. I expect more fourth down regression from the Commanders. I expect a wire-to-wire type of win for Detroit. I moved on Lions double result minus 174. I couldn't. What double result market are you looking at? What book, if you don't mind me sharing? 365. Yeah, I don't have access. And then I have the Lions. So I have the Lions double result straight, paying the juice. And then I have Lions double result plus Eagles money line for plus 114.
Lions double result was your minus 174. And then Lions double with
I say that the Commanders, I mentioned how they had some comparisons, some things that I've seen that, matches up with like the Steelers, but I also see a very similar situation as like the Chiefs in terms of fraudulency. You look at yards per play. They're getting outgained by bad teams and they're pulling out wins. The luck is going to, I don't think I've seen a luckier team in the NFL in the past few years, especially a playoff team as lucky as the Commanders have been this season.
What was the juice on the Lions double and the Eagles money line?
Minus 174. So plus 114.
Plus 114. Well, I'm going to figure out what I can do with this Lions double result. Do I need to, bet more than a unit on it and keep it straight, or do I want to add it to something? I will figure it out. Coin also saying the under's 19-5 last 20 years in the playoffs when a number 1 seed faces a number 6 seed in the second round. All right, there you go. I'm on the under 55.5. The thinking here is that if the Commanders don't hold on to the ball for 34, 35 minutes of this football game, they have no chance of winning. If that means, as we've seen so often, Jaden Daniels is on third down or fourth down running to the outside to get those yards to convert, which they've been so good at this year, then I think there's a chance. But I hate when I just make a bet here. I can't help myself. I just make the bet. And that's what I did when I saw this total at 55.5. Well, it was open at 56 at some books again. I have the under 55.5. What am I going to do with the Lions double result? Troy moved on the Lions double result at minus 174 and used the Lions double result with the Eagles at plus 114. That is Saturday football. We move on to Sunday.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Spenny. I agree with you, brother. Like, when you think about the double result versus the spread, I do believe that, especially with a guy like Jane Daniels, I don't know if the clock's going to strike completely midnight. Maybe he could pull off a backdoor cover, but I think the Lions are going to jump out to a really commanding lead.
Let's roll on. We head to Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern, the NFC Divisional Playoffs, the LA Rams, 10-7, 5-3 on the road. The Philadelphia Eagles, 14-3, 8-1 at home. We're at Lincoln Financial Field. in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It's 39 Fahrenheit, rain showers. It'll be snowing in the morning. It'll stop snowing, but it will continue to rain. Rain showers. Now, it's not rain. It's rain showers, so it's something we need to keep an eye on. There's very little wind, 4-mile-per-hour winds. You're going to hear Troy and I on different sides here, and I'm also on the under. I was extremely concerned with the market today on the under. This started climbing in a situation that made no sense to me, which generally is a very, very bad situation for me. This opened up at 44.5. This opened up at midnight. So it only opened up almost 21 hours ago. It went to 43.5 with regular, like, Pick'em Vig an hour and a half later. But there was a move today on the over that caught me by surprise. I got in on the 44 when it was a 43.5 at a Pick'em at other books. I got in under 44 minus 111. This line went from over 43.5 at minus 106 to 2 p.m. when it was over 43.5 at minus 120. When they moved it to 44, it's heavily juiced to the over. Very, very, very uncomfortable being on under with that market move. From a cash perspective, we have 60% of the tickets and 70% of the cash on the Rams. They're public. Why wouldn't they be public after what everyone saw them do to Minnesota, as well as the storylines behind, stepping up for their city with the fires that have been attacking various parts of the greater LA area. 72% of the tickets and 61% cash is on the over. So 28% of tickets, 39% cash on the under, which is a great place to be in with those numbers, but it climbing makes me extremely uncomfortable. Start with the LA Rams. Passing offense 11th at 226.1 yards per game. Rushing offense 24th, just 103.1. You don't think of that when you think about how successful Kyren Williams has been. Their red zone offense being a problem all year, 25th, 52.2%. Their third down offense being bad too, 25th at 36%. Their passing defense 19th, 219.5 yards per game they allow through the air. Their rush defense is 21st, 128.7. The red zone defense is 6th in the league, 49.1% of the time they allow touchdowns. Really nice number. And their third down defense has been a problem, 19th at 40.3%. And they finished with 2.6 sacks per game, 9th in the league, a pass rush that got better as the season went on. These two teams met in week 12 when the Eagles beat up the Rams 37-20. The Eagles ran for 314 yards now on the Rams. Now, I may have made a mistake here, backing the Rams at +6. But I've got to the point where I have so much faith in McVay, where I now think that it's right for someone to think that he's the best coach in the NFL. Now, I know there's others that are, arguably can compete there, but I just have so much faith in him. As a 49er fan, he gets more than the sum of his parts consistently. And he steps up with his angles in the most important games, in the most important situations. The Rams are on a short week after the impressive 27-9 victory over the Vikings at State Farm in Arizona. Now be playing their second straight travel game on a short week. That's not easy. Stafford was 19-27 for 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Higbee led receivers with 5 catches for 58 yards. He did that in 12 plays. Then he left the game with a chest injury. McVay, he was in the hospital on Monday night. He's in stable condition. We don't know. It's unclear what the injury is. We know if it's Parkinson and Hunter Long and Davis Allen, it's a big drop from Higbee. Allen and Long both caught a pass. Parkinson caught 2. Puka Nacua caught 5 passes for 44 yards. Kyren Williams ran 16 times for 76 yards, and the offense did struggle at times. And we know, they're 2 of 10 on third down, 2 of 4 in the red zone. They get big plays. They make big plays. And then Kyren Williams is generally quite good in the red zone. Pass rush was dynamite. 9 sacks and 12 quarterback hits. They held the Vikings to just 3.8 yards per play. Kobe Durant had an interception. Akilo Witherspoon left with the thigh injury. He's listed as questionable this week. If it is Josh Wallace, who's next up, because Kobe Durant, Darius Williams, and Quentin Lake are playing very, very well. So if it is Josh Wallace, it's a drop. This defense that is being questioned by many was the fifth in EPA allowed per play since week 15. And then we get onto this short rest. Dan's rant saying short week. The problem with a short week. Sean McVay 16-7 against the spread on short rest. In his last 8 games on short rest, he's 7-1 against the spread. In his last 14 games on short rest, he's 12-2 against the spread. With Stafford as his quarterback on short rest, he's 8-2 against the spread. I just think he's an absolute mastermind. I think that you have a coaching advantage and arguably a quarterback advantage. Very arguably. And that was enough for me to expect the Rams to stay within 6 points. Let's talk about these LA Rams, Troy. NFC Divisional Playoffs, Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Take it away.
Yeah, I just came on the show last week, and I was super bullish on the Rams. And I came on the live stream last night, and I was super bullish on the Rams. And I think that this is the exact opposite situation that we just seen. We know the Rams are going to be way outside of their comfort zone going into Philly this weekend. Stafford has not one road playoff win in the cold in his entire career. On the road in the cold. Where has he played? On the road and won a playoff game. He hasn't. The only game he won on the road in general, outdoors, right? Not in a dome. Only one game. It was in Tampa Bay, which is, it was beautiful weather that night. The only cold weather game of the season this year, right? We're talking about this year right now. Stafford averaged 4.8 yards per play. They scored 19 points, and Stafford finished with 110 yards. That was against the Jets. And on the road this season, I didn't see who was talking about it in the chat. Somebody was talking about the numbers on the road. Who have they really beaten on the road this year? They beat the Jets. I mean, the Jets were one of the worst teams in the NFL, 19-9. The 49ers, 12-6. And we know the 49ers issues this season. The Saints, we know they're terrible. The Patriots, competitive, but pretty bad. Seattle, I was on the Rams in that game. And that was one of the games this year where I have it marked as a favorable variance. The Chicago Bears, they lost. They got crushed by Arizona, and they lost to Detroit. I mean, I just feel like what they've put together on the road, outdoors, I just can't get behind it. I went back and looked at it. I mean, you talked about it one of the weeks, Jim. You talked about betting the under because of Stafford on the road, and I started to really do some deep diving on that, especially when I was considering it backing them against San Francisco on the road, even though that wasn't a cold weather game, right? I mean, we're talking about California. Here, they're coming to Philly. Like, I just can't imagine that they're going to be very comfortable playing against Philly, especially with this defense. And we've seen what happened. I mean, we've seen this matchup play out already once this season, just like we've seen the Rams and the Vikings matchup play out. And I expect to see a very similar situation, similar thing here. Stafford showed the flaws of the Flores blitz, drop 8 and coverage scheme. I mean, just a polarized scheme. Stafford showed the flaws. He did it the first time too. But after the script yesterday, what do we really see? The offense kind of fizzled out. They weren't very impressive. They did enough to continue to put, points on the board, be it threes. But, Stafford has been extremely impressive against certain schemes. But generally speaking this year, another quarterback that's just having a extremely down year. Stafford had a passer rating over average only 7 games this season. Only 2 of them were on the road. One of them was against the Saints indoors, and the Saints defense, which is terrible. And the Patriots, and we know the Patriots defense is trash. And if you look back to the first time these two teams match up, they allowed pressure on 14 of 36 pass attempts. 3 of their offensive linemen graded out below 50, which is a flunking grade. 2 of them were in the 20s. Eagles only allowed 1 pressure to Jared Verse. I mean, how is this the 2 tackles, 2 of the best tackles in the NFL? I think it's definitely the best tackle combo tandem in the NFL. Mailata and Lane Johnson. I mean, they held Jared Verse to a PFF grade only 40, only allowed one pressure. Only 3 defensive players grade out above average in general for the Rams. And Stafford, I mean, the entire offense that day, they struggled. And I expect them to struggle because we're not talking about a Flores scheme, a high risk, high reward, very volatile, very polarized scheme. We're talking about Vic Fangio and the best pass defense in the NFL with one of the most destructive interior defensive linemen, 2 fantastic linebackers, and I think the best slot cornerback in the NFL for years to come in Dijon. I feel like it's a steep climb for this Rams team this week. And I think the number, despite the action, what the action looks like, and we know that what we've seen with the Rams, we already seen this number start to move towards the Eagles. And I think that's more confluence for me.
Yeah. I understand all of your points. They make a lot of sense here. They make a lot of sense. There's no way of getting around it. Let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't believe in all of the stories about AJ reading the book on the sidelines. I mean, he's a quirky guy. I don't think that he's. I would be much more comfortable if he did that after catching 6 passes for 90 yards. Doing that after catching 1 pass for 10 yards is probably why people had problems with it. But look, he's just a different type of guy, and you just got to let him be his quirkiness.
Who's that you're talking about?
AJ Brown.
AJ Brown.
Reading that book on the sidelines after catching 1 ball for 10 yards. I mean, it's an ass clown thing to do, but I mean, who does it hurt? It doesn't really hurt anybody. I don't know. We've watched receivers with enormous talent do questionable things, and like Antonio Brown, and it leads to bigger problems as you move forward. I don't think that there's any turmoil really between him and Jalen Hurts that Jalen Hurts can't handle. Passing offense for the Eagles, though, is 30th in the league, 184.2 yards per game. Rushing offense is 2nd, 178.7 yards per game. Red zone offense, 17th. They score touchdowns 55.6% of the time. They're not very good in the red zone, surprisingly, this year. Third down offense, 10th, 40.7% of the time they convert. Passing defense, they only allow 175.3 yards per game. That's best in the NFL. Rush defense is 9th, allowing 104.3. We have their red zone defense 4th. They only allow touchdowns 49% of the time, and their third down defense 9th, allowing conversions just 36.6% of the time. And sacks are 16th, 2.4 sacks per game. Coming off that 22-10 victory at home over the Packers, Jalen Hurts was 13-21 for just 131 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also ran 6 times for 36 yards. Devonta Smith caught 4 passes for 55 yards. Goddard caught 4 for 47 yards and a touchdown. Saquon ran 25 times for 119 yards, but the offense, it didn't look very good. They were 2 of 11 on third down and 1 of 4 in the red zone. It was the defense that looked excellent. Shut the Packers out in the first half, held them to 1 of 3 in the red zone. Got, Zach Bond, Darius Slay, and Quinion Mitchell interceptions. Pass rush had 2 sacks and 5 quarterback hits. They're not a very good pass rush. The Eagles gave up the fewest completions of 20 yards or more in the regular season. Helps them very much. Now, Nakobe Dean tore the patellar tendon in his left knee. He is done for the season. It hurts, but they have depth. When it comes down to it, I know that the Eagles are the type of team that can win by margin. They can suffocate you. They can trickle, flood. But with McVay and Stafford, I just believe that they can keep this a 1-score football game. And maybe this is a ridiculous statement. Certainly, if we get to the kickoff and 60% of the tickets and 70% of the cash is on the Rams, and the Rams are on the Rams, and the Rams are at plus 6.5, I'll probably want to buy out of it. But I can't understand why this total is climbing. The Eagles unders have been so good to me, and the Rams unders have been so good. I mean, they're just teams that they dictate the pace of play depending on what they need. So if if the Rams are down by 18 points, then yeah, the game's going to go over because the Rams are going to open it up. But I just don't see the Rams opening it up. You know, the issues for the Eagles are real. You know, their red zone offense is pedestrian. Their passing offense can disappear at times. I'm nervous about the spot. I'm nervous with your breakdown. We should make your action here official. So what is your official action?
So I got the Eagles -5.5, -115. Then I have the Lions double result with the Eagles money line parlayed for +114. And I get your side, you know, your side of things too. I mean, there's definitely two sides to every story, especially when you're talking about a guy like McVay, who, if anybody's going to be able to put a scheme together that keeps this game competitive. And what part of the reason why, you know, I had to get some money line action is to your point. I mean, why you love Eagles unders, Jimmy. It's because this is not a team that's going to press the issue, especially when they don't have to. When they have a dominant offensive line and a running attack like they do, they can turn around and hand the ball off. It's not the best team to pick to win by margin, and I totally, you know, I definitely see that side of the tale. It's just, you know, parlay the Stafford's issues on the road, outdoors, in weather conditions, with a bad offensive line, a defensive coordinator that knows how to put together a damn game plan. It knows exactly when to call the right plays. And what they did against the Packers offense, I know that the Packers offense had their problems and they were missing their vertical threat, but we know the Packers still are able to put up points. And watching what Philly did to them, it was completely demoralizing. I mean, I didn't even really think about the Eagles offense in that way, shape, or form. I mean, seeing A.J. Brown one catch, it just tells me that they were not threatened at all, especially after that first fumble. I mean, that basically changed the entire outlook in the course of the game. Obviously, they turned it into a touchdown right away, and it just looked like the air was let out of the balloon so fast for the Packers. So I don't want to we've seen this Eagles team be pressed too, and in press situations, they've been able to rise to the occasion this year. I think about the Bengals when they were going back and forth early in the game. Think about the last time they went into L.A. and they smacked up this Rams team. And actually, speaking of that game, I think that this is more explainable, you know, than the number we were talking about with the Texans as 3.5 point favorites up to 8.5 point favorites just from regular season to playoffs. Well, now we're looking at, you know, the Eagles were laying 3 in LA in what week was it? Week 8. Now they're catching week 12. So they're laying 3 in LA. Now they're laying, you know, now they're basically laying 6 points. And it tells us one thing is that the LA home field advantage is 0 points. It is absolutely 0 points. And it rings true with the line yesterday and how that didn't move, even though they moved the game away from their home, right? They moved it to Phoenix. They weren't at home. The line didn't change, and it turned out to be accurate. I feel like the Eagles' offensive line will completely neutralize the best quality of this Rams defense, which is their front seven. Jared Verse, complete potential game disruptor. Well, not against Lane Johnson, not against Mailata, two of the best tackles in the league. Stafford, I talk about this. I can't stop talking about it because if you go back and review what he did on the road, outdoors, in the cold weather, it's not been pretty. And Jalen Hurts, I mean, yeah, like there's definitely some current concerns. I feel like his hesitancy, he definitely, you know, a lot of times doesn't seem like he's in the flow of the game. And I think the fact that they run the ball a lot kind of creates that situation for him. So he's going to have to be able to overcome that in the playoffs if they want to go all the way. But he's been much better against zone coverage. That's another reason I like this matchup. And then obviously, you know, seeing what the offensive line did to this defensive line in the first matchup, I don't know why we would expect to see much different.
I think the defense has improved massively. I think the Rams defense has improved enormously. That's the only difference. I mean, look at the game we just watched the Rams play. What did you think, unless you already know? 9 sacks, 12 quarterback hits. What do you think Jared Verse did? And we know he returned the fumble. But do you know what he did in this game?
1 sack.
No, 0 sacks, 0 quarterback hits. And they still got 9 sacks and 12 quarterback hits. I just think this team is deeper than we remember. Now, look, the short rest and the travel,
The thing about the run, their ability to stop the run and how much it has improved, and on paper, you could definitely make that case. But what are you going to do against Darnold at quarterback? You're going to stack the box. You're going to make sure they stop the run. If you put 8 in the box, we know Jalen Hurts could throw the deep ball.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely make the case that their defense is improved. But what have they done against competent teams, competent offenses? There's not a lot. There's not a lot here. The Buffalo Bills they're not really the same as the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, yeah, I mean, I trust me. Like, I bet the Rams yesterday. I was so confident in that matchup. So I definitely think the defense has stepped up, but the reason I'm on the Lions is the most. I talked about it a lot of times like this. The most dominant form of football. Mount Carmel in Illinois, they just continuously win the championships because they could turn around nonstop and hand the ball off. And I feel like with what we've seen with the Rams outdoors, I mean, 20 points is going to be enough to win the game.
No, I hear you. I'm not comfortable. I'm not sitting here bullish here. And,
I'm surprised that I thought it would be flip-flop. I thought might be on the Chiefs and then might be on the Eagles with me.
Well, I've got the Eagles plus 600 to win the NFC with $500. I mean, that's
some big, yeah.
It's $3,000. So, having 300 on a middle here, or possible middle, I mean, it's not like the worst case scenario. Yeah.
Blue numbers. There's not one number, not even a blue number, that bears that to be true.
That is the Rams Eagles. Troy on the Eagles -5.5 and -115. He's got the Eagles with the Lions double result at +114. And I got the Rams +6 and Rams Philly under 44. Do you think there's any possibility here that Hurts throws for 85 yards and they don't want him to be the quarterback next year?
No, I don't. I don't think that's even a viable option. Because you look at some of his on-target rates, like downfield and on the left side of the field, on the right side, intermediate, deep, like some of the throws he makes, it's his hesitancy that holds him back.
Well, we've watched him in Brazil throw across his body 35, 40 yards into the end zone in the most egregious play of any quarterback in the NFL this season. We've watched him make questionable decisions a lot. All right. Well, that is Rams Eagles, Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Let's move on to the big one. 6:30 p.m. Eastern, AFC Divisional Playoffs. Baltimore Ravens 12-5, 6-3 on the road at the Buffalo Bills 13-4, 8-0 at home. Highmark Stadium in Orchard Park, New York. 17 Fahrenheit, snow shower, 7 miles per hour. We've got a lot of cappers in the Buffalo region. Jim Dewigger, boots on the ground being one of them. We got a bunch of them. And they told us last week that there was going to be no snow, even though it stated snow showers. So again, we want to use our guys who have boots on the ground to decide. It's going to be very, very cold though. 17 Fahrenheit, 7 mile per hour wind, snow showers. Let's get into the line history here. We have the Baltimore Ravens right now -1 at -108. They opened up +1 and they're now -1. You might get a better idea of the situation on the money line. You have Baltimore -116. They opened up -101. So they've gone from dog to favorite. We should probably begin there because when Lamar Jackson opens up as an underdog, he's 17-3 against the spread in his career. If you want teasers, he's 19-1 in a 6-point teaser. Only 6 times in Lamar Jackson's career has he opened as an underdog and ended up closing as the favorite. 6 times in his career. He's 6-0, straight up and against the spread. And he's covered those games by 9.1 points per game. So that has to be where we start. You're going to hear a lot about that. You're going to hear that trend over and over again, I imagine, this week. From a total scenario here, We have a 51.5 minus 108 to the under. This opened up 51.5 juice to the over. It's now juice to the under. It's the 4-cent move to the under. When we get to the cash flow here, we have on the spread 53% of the tickets, 61% of the cash on the Ravens. On the money line, 49% of the tickets, 53% of cash on the Ravens. And on the total, 38% of tickets and 56% cash on the under. Dennis Garcia says he also loves the under. Says both these teams want to run, play, keep away, long drives, low possession game. If they are perfect in the red zone, so be it. I knew that you'd love the under, and I'm very interested in the under as well. But I really don't want to make this bet now. Even if it drops a point or a point and a half, it just feels like one of those games that at 4:30 p.m. on Sunday, the public's going to start smashing this over, and it climbs 2.5 points before kickoff, and I'm sitting there screaming, why did I bet it early?
Yeah, but why? See, that's one I would recommend at least getting some of the bet down now. And I know it's hard because you share your action, right? And so it makes it way sharing your action makes things way more difficult too. Because I want to post everything that I actually bet, and this is a situation where I would want to get something down on 51.5 before I go official, hopefully on a bigger number down, later in the week.
Yeah, this is important. That's why we want to talk all of this out. So let's roll here. We'll start with the Ravens. Passing offense, 8th in the league, 233.3 yards per game through the year. Rushing offense, first, 193.8 yards per game on the ground. Red zone offense, first. Score touchdown 74.3% of the time. Third down offense, second. They convert 49.5% of the time. Passing defense is 30th. They allow 244.5 yards per game through the air, but they have the number one rush defense in the league, allowing just 77.2 yards per game on the ground. Red zone defense and third down defense have improved drastically over the last 10 weeks. Red zone defense now 13th in the league, allowing touchdowns 54% of the time. Their third down defense now 18th in the league, allowing conversions 40.1% of the time. And the 3.2 sacks per game puts them second in the NFL. These two teams met in week 4. Ravens beat up the Bills 35-10 in Baltimore. Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry combined to run for 253 yards on 30 carries in that one. These two offenses are number 1 and number 2 in EPA per play. This will mark the second playoff meeting between these two quarterbacks. Buffalo beat the Ravens 17-3 in the 2020 Divisional Round. Ravens come in off an impressive 28-14 victory at home over the Steelers. They outgained the Steelers 464-280. 29 first downs compared to just 11 for the Steelers. Baltimore was up 19-2 in first downs after the first half. This is what Dennis is talking about. And we see Dan's rants loving the over, and I can understand that. But even against Pittsburgh, and nobody would be sitting here saying, "Oh, but the Bills' defense is so much better than the Steelers' defense." They're similar. The Baltimore had touchdown drives in the first half of 95, 85, and 90 yards. They completely suffocate the opponent. The Ravens had 10 touchdown drives of at least 90 yards in the regular season. 10 touchdowns. No team's done that in 25 years, Troy. No team has done that in 25 years. Jackson was 16-21 for 175 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also ran 15 times for 81 yards. Derrick Henry outrushed Baltimore with Lamar Jackson. Derrick Henry outrushed Pittsburgh 299-29. It was the most yards rushing allowed by Pittsburgh in a playoff game in the history of their franchise. It broke the mark of 232 set by the Oakland Raiders 51 years ago. Zay Jones is out with an injury. We'll talk about whether we expect him to be in the lineup here, but it changed a lot for the Ravens. Isaiah Likely led receivers with 3 catches for 53 yards, and the Ravens got very little from their wide receivers. Tylan Wallace took 53% of the snaps. He caught 1 pass for 21 yards. Rashad Bateman took 49% of the snaps. He caught 2 passes for 24 yards, touchdown. Steven Sims took 18% of the snaps. He didn't catch a pass. Anthony Miller took 12% of the snaps. He caught 3 passes for 12 yards. So Bateman, was the leader in route share, 86%. Wallace, 50%. Aguilar, 36%. Miller, 23%. despite not getting anything from their receivers or very little from their receivers, wide receivers, that is, the Ravens went 10 of 15 on third down and 3 of 4 in the red zone, held on to the ball for 39 minutes and 33 seconds of the game. That's clearly what both offensive coordinators are being instructed to do. Keep the ball for the longest drives, keep the opposition quarterback off the field. The Ravens defense looked excellent, didn't allow the Steelers to run a single play in the red zone. Pass rush was strong with 4 sacks and 7 quarterback hits. And then the elephant in the room is Lamar Jackson going from dog to favorite. 6-0 against the spread, 6-0 straight up, covering the spread by 9.1 points per game. Take it away, Troy. I know you believe in these Ravens. Got them to win the AFC. Take it away, floor's yours.
Wait, can you say that last Lamar Jackson when he flips from dog to favorite?
Yes, 6-0 straight up and against the spread, covering the spread by 9.1 points per game. And in the games when Lamar Jackson opens as an underdog, just opening as an underdog, 17-3 against the spread, 19-1 in 6-point teasers.
What the hell? What the hell? I'm going to have to look deeper at that because I'm pulling some numbers right now, looking at when market flips. And in the past 3 years, we haven't seen a home team flip from dog to favorite, or from favorite to dog, excuse me, like we have seen the Bills. But the past 3 NFL regular seasons, because it hasn't happened in the postseason, home teams that open at 1 or 1.5 and close as dogs, the road team in that situation is 10-5 ATS, and it's 13-2 to the under. Going under by the average total score in the games, 36 points with an average total of 44 points. So it goes under by 8 points on average. I think that's pretty compelling. And I think that this matchup, a lot of what I'm hearing, I'm liking, suggesting the under's the right spot in this game, maybe even more so than the Ravens, even though I do believe the Ravens are the right side. I already moved on the Ravens in this game. I bet the money line minus 113. Last week, this is my second week in a row fading the Bills. And it was to my dismay. I mean, that was the one pick this past week where I really felt like I was on the wrong side pretty much the entire game. After that Broncos, 60-yard touchdown pass, everything I seen from that point, I was gone. I knew I was in big trouble. But it's another rematch from an earlier season game. So we have a lot of data points to cover. We look at that first game. The Ravens outgained them. Did you touch on this, Jim? I was digging into the under. That first matchup, the Ravens outgained them 7.9 to 4.1 yards per play. That's probably the biggest margin I've ever seen in an NFL game, and I check that number before I look at any game. The Bills went 3 for 13 on third down. Not something we're very familiar with seeing the Bills. I know it's early in the season. The offensive line pass blocking grades, 56, 55, 53, 55, and 40. They allowed a 41% pressure rate against this Ravens team. The Ravens ran – which team are we talking about here, Jim? Are we talking about the Bills or are we talking about the Ravens?
Right now we're talking about your Baltimore Ravens.
My Baltimore Ravens. Yeah, well, the Ravens in that game earlier in the season, week 4, ran the ball for 271 yards on 8 yards per carry. Only one player didn't post a flunking grade on the defense, and that was Rasul Douglas. Why did the Ravens dominate a game like this? Is because of a lot of what I talked about last week with the Bills, and I can't wait to jump into that. But the one thing I do want to talk about is the Ravens defense, which I know, like I hear people talk about that they've been fraudulent, they haven't been playing good competition, and you can make that case. But this Ravens defense, whether you like it or not, has been uptrending. They're top 7 in overall in PFF grade, overall defense. Haven't allowed more than 17 points in 5 straight weeks. Now, that's where the weak competition comes in. But let's look at them against good competition or supposedly good offenses in the NFL. Talked about this Bills team, only 4.1 yards per play that game. Josh Allen, only 5 rushes for 21 yards, because there's something pretty common I'm seeing with this Ravens team is they're really good at containing mobile quarterbacks. Because after they contained Josh Allen, they contained the Commanders and Jane Daniels as well. They held Jane Daniels to under league average in yards per play at 5.3, and Daniels 6 rushes for 22 yards. Let's look at the Eagles. The Eagles won that game pretty convincingly, and it's a great data point that I referred to with the Eagles, but the Eagles got held to just 4.7 yards per play. Hurts, 9 rushes for 29 yards, not very impressive. And then the Broncos, 41-10, held the Broncos to 4.7 yards per play, and Knicks, 6 carries for 36 yards. I think the defense is way closer to what we've seen out of the Ravens defense in the later part of the season than we have in the early part of the season. So we know this Ravens offense is one of the best in the NFL. This is probably the most bullish I am on any team in the NFL at this point right now. And they've grown on me as the season's progressed.
You have them to win the AFC, and that is your lone future outstanding. Is that? Oh no, you have the Lions.
I have the Lions and the Eagles to not only win the NFC. I got half unit on both teams to win the NFC, and then half unit on both teams to win the Super Bowl. But I have 2 units on the Ravens to win the AFC.
And I only have left the Eagles to win the NFC. My only spot back left here. Outstanding. Let's talk about the Buffalo Bills. So you are in with the Ravens at plus 115. Is that right? 115?
Ravens minus 113.
Oh shit! Sorry, I thought my bad. Okay,
no,
sorry.
yeah, I didn't get the plus money on this. I wanted to see. This is a very important. This is one where I'm way more comfortable taking a worse number, especially with how efficient the database has been historically. Now I know we haven't seen a spot like this in the playoffs, so maybe it's different. But you already talked about it. Lamar Jackson flipping.
It's a monster trend that I think will be talked about a lot here. Let's talk about the Bills passing offense, 9th in the league, 229.8 yards per game. Rushing offense, 9th with 135.6 on the ground. Red zone offense, 3rd, 68.1%. And Josh Allen's an absolute monster. Third down offense, 7th. They convert 44.7% of the time. Passing defense, 20th, allowing 221.6 yards per game. Rush defense, 12th, 113.4. Their red zone defense is 16th. They allow touchdowns 56.5% of the time. Their third down defense being a problem all year, 24th. Allowing conversions 42.9% of the time. And their pass rush has been very pedestrian, 2.3 sacks per game. That's 20th in the league. And we've talked often about how small this defense is. Their baseball teams are bigger than the Buffalo Bills defense. Bills come in off an impressive 31-7 victory at home over the Broncos. Outgained the Broncos 471 to 224. They continue to deliver such a balanced offense. First NFL team, as you guys know, in history to score 30 touchdowns rushing and passing in the same season. Josh Allen was 28-26 for 272 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also ran 8 times for 46 yards. The offensive line was excellent. I mean, that's what I was the most astonished by in that Broncos-Bills game. We knew the Broncos had this pass rush that led the league with 63 sacks. Josh Allen was sacked twice. They were forced to punt once. I mean, there was no concern about pressure.
No, he was extremely comfortable.
Very. Curtis Samuel caught 3 passes for 68 yards and a touchdown. Khalil Shakir was next with 6 for 61. Cook ran 23 times for 120 yards and touchdown. The offense, 10 of 17 on 3rd and 4th down, but just 1 of 5 in the red zone. The Bills dominated time of possession, 41-43 to 18-17. Their defense was excellent throughout. Held the Broncos to 3 of 12 on 3rd and 4th down. Allowed them just 1 failed red zone attempt. Pass rush had 2 sacks and 4 quarterback hits. I understand that we don't need to put too much into that no-show in week 4. It was a long time ago, and the Bills were in a bad spot situationally. Baltimore was an angry group coming off the loss.
5-unit bet of the season. That actually started the reversal from down 30 units to up 7.69 at 1.20. I'm going to get it back.
I know you will. Talk about the Bills here. This is the lone game I haven't moved on, but and I think that what Dan is saying, Dan's rants is saying, saying that he agreed that the plan would be to keep the opposition quarterback off the field as much as possible. But he says after the first quarter, it's just going to turn into matching the last score of the other team, which I think is, a real, legit statement that Dan's making, which makes me think it's the first half under that might be the spot. Because if it gets down, if these teams need to score, well, they're going to score. In the first half, it'll be more of a chess match at that point.
This is where you bring that up makes so much sense to me that I wish I had a database of first half numbers and line movement, because I bet you we see a discrepancy in this line, because that makes way too much sense.
I think it makes sense to me. Dennis Garcia says he's not sure about that. So, I
know. And it makes me think of the last time we did that with the Ravens. Remember Ravens, Eagles first half under, then it goes way under.
full game went way under. I guess what that means is you probably have to take first half and full game, but
I know, but then you've got to commit 2 full units instead of being able to split it.
I mean, you could split it with your own action, but for me, having a half unit on the first half, like my unit size is not that big. I mean, 300. Having $150 on it for that, it just does very little for me. Like but record wise, I get it. Talk to us about the Bills and your expectation of them in this game. I know you're on the Ravens. You've talked about moving on the total. Talk about your thoughts of this Buffalo Bills football team.
This Bills team. I mean, a lot. Like I brought up a lot of this handicap last week, and one of the biggest things, and you touched on it already, is how small they are. There was one episode of Bankroll Blitz where I kind of went down the roster, like I do sometimes when I'm talking about their recent history, right? And I went down the list and I talked about the size of their linebackers and their front seven, essentially, and how terribly small they are. That's a huge problem. It's a massive problem versus a Ravens team that can not only run the football, but they could add RPO, not only run pass option, but run option, which we see a lot out of the Ravens and really only out of the Ravens. And that's actually a hard number to like get your hands on and see what the efficiency metrics are, because usually when you're talking about you can find RPO, but the problem with that is there is no pass option with a lot of these options that the Ravens are running. The Bills defense, they play this bend but don't break defense. The Bills are 29th in the NFL defending the short passing game. Lamar Jackson is second in passer rating and yards per attempt in passes between 1 and 9 yards. He's first in yards per attempt and first in passer rating in the NFL in the intermediate range and by margin in both these categories. His pass rating is 22 points higher in intermediate range because the Bills are going to want to play bend but don't break. But the problem is once their backs get against the wall and the Ravens are running the football down their throat in the red zone, I feel like it's going to be real hard for this Bills team to make the appropriate adjustments with the personnel they have. I always try to find the case and make an angle. Like, are they going to put another, are they going to put another safety in the box? What are they going to do to defend this run game? Are they going to put 5 defensive linemen down, which we haven't seen from the Bills all season? Maybe that's the best way to go. I don't know what we're going to see because I really don't know what the chess move is looking at their defense and trying to put myself in the mind of a defensive coordinator. And we've seen it last night. I mean, I was calling out Sam Darnold and his inability to throw it outside of the hash marks. And if you watched every down, the Rams just funneled their coverage towards the middle of the field, forced him to throw it outside the hash. And he could not do it. And he could not complete a pass to the left side of the field. Like some of these cases, like numbers don't lie, especially when it matches the film. And I don't see any chess moves that the Bills defense can play. So does it lead me to a team total under? I don't think so, because I really like the idea of the script being for both offenses to keep the ball out of the opposing team's quarterback hands. That makes way too much sense to me. But then again, so does, fourth quarter, 8 minutes left. One team's down 3, they put up 6. What's going to happen? The other team's going to put up 6. Then what's going to happen? You know what I mean? They could just go back and forth. We see Josh Allen do it. But I feel like from what we've seen with the Bills, especially in the playoffs in the past, I think that team is a lot different now. And I'm not saying they're elite. I think whoever wins this game goes on to play in the Super Bowl. So I think this is the best game of the season by far. It's going to be interesting to see what this Bills defense does, but I just cannot back this Bills defense from what I've seen and what they put on film against good defenses or good offenses.
Zay Flowers, let me ask you this. Zay Flowers out of the lineup. Now, he could, I said Jones. I don't know what the hell I said Zay Jones for. I apologize for that earlier. But Zay Flowers, we talked about what it looked like without Flowers in there with, likely in the tight ends.
12 personnel, yeah.
It was, if Zay Flowers is not out there, will you be a little concerned for the Ravens, especially if they need to score or need to score quickly?
Yes. Yeah. If they need to score quickly, it's going to be a different animal, 100%. But I do expect the Ravens to be winning this game. And I do expect part of the game plan is to keep the ball out of the Bills' hands. And if I remember watching the game, even back in week 4, whenever it was, the Ravens were chewing clock. I mean, I will verify this and I'll tweet it out or something, but I'm pretty sure that the snaps or the seconds per play, which is a metric I look at, was the longest they've been all season. Ravens Bills week 4. And I think that makes sense. You want to keep the ball out of a guy's hands like Josh Allen. It does concern me a little bit, Flowers being out, because I think he's an incredible talent. I think he can beat man. He can find the holes in zone. He can catch a deep ball. He's got very good hands. He can catch the screen.
He can beat the first tackle.
He could break a fucking tackle.
Yeah,
it's receiver. I mean, it's definitely a loss. But I would like to say this too, is that I bet you part of the scheme is going to be coming out in 12 personnel, regardless if Zay Flowers is in or out.
But doesn't the 12 personnel make you want or make you more interested in the under?
Yes, 100% it does. Yes, it does, especially with the bend but don't break defense. I could see it, and like I was saying in the chat, who is bullish on the under? Who got me on this under? Is it Dan or
Dennis?
DG, Dennis Garcia. It does, because if there's 1 or 2 field goals in the red zone at some point in this game, like I feel like this is going to be one of those games going under by margin.
So this is the lone game, really. I can't. We can move past this Bills Ravens game. We have Troy on the Ravens moneyline -113. We're talking heavily about the under. Bill Green is in the house. Nice to see you, Bill. Says the Ravens and Bills are power running teams with Wizards at quarterback. Yes, but neither team at this point really has with Zay Flowers out, the WR1 that can change everything in a second. I mean, is Khalil Shakir at that point? I mean, I don't.
No, he's a grind out yards kind of guy. He's not an explosive downfield going to break a.
When I look at this card, I don't see personally the slam dunk of what to tie to the Lions double result. I guess you could tie the Lions double result to like the Chiefs money line on one side, Lions double result to the Eagles money line. I guess you could have both of those, but I'm a little I found it so easy last week. Tying the Ravens double result with the Eagles, I just felt was like a slam dunk. And maybe it is again here. I think that the Lions double result has to be utilized, and it's a mistake if I just let it go. And I don't know if I want to have the -170 action. I mean, I could put 1.5 units or 2 units on it, but I think I would prefer just tying it with a couple spots here. And as much as I can understand all of the Ravens backers, I mean, if the Ravens are up 6 points and there's 57 seconds left in the game, you guys are not going to be comfortable with Josh Allen. Say what?
How many points are we up?
6.
Oh no, that'd be awful.
Josh Allen,
he's
so special. He's so unbelievably special. He's such a monster. And you can say the exact same thing about Lamar Jackson. Don't get me wrong. Dennis says he will be comfortable. So he is no concern of a Josh Allen-led comeback.
Dennis, are you on the Ravens as well, or are you just on the under?
Good question. That is our 4 divisional football games. We'll be back next week with the conference finals, and next week will be the last Bankroll Blitz, because when we get to the Super Bowl, we are going to put together a compilation of a whole bunch of cappers breaking down the game. So this is our second to last show here. Let's review action. We have, he's on the Ravens. And Dougie Y says us Ravens bettors are banking on more of a dominant victory. So we are both, Troy and I, on the Texans +8.5 -110. I'm also on Houston, Kansas City under 42. Then I'm on the under 55.5 in Washington, Detroit. Troy's on Lions double result, and he's also on Lions double result with the Eagles money line. See, I'm thinking that is the way. Okay, I'm starting to figure out how to add to this in ways that I think will work for me.
Especially the plus money on that spot. I mean, you basically leveled me up with the double result money line parlay.
Yeah, it's Well, and the double results have been just so monstrous for me this year. Shout out to Dabby Cab in the chat, says Ravens winning it all this year. I'm on the Rams +6 and the under 44. Troy's on the Eagles -5.5. Then Troy's on the Ravens money line, and I've still got to decide how to attack this AFC Divisional Playoff.
I also moved under 51.5, Jimmy.
Full
I
game.
bet it. But like I said earlier, I mean, I put 200 on it. I have another 200 dry powder that I'm ready to go. And if I turn to a super mega bowl come Friday, which is usually Thursday, I have enough time to readdress every single game and every single situation. So yeah, I might be a little bit heavier on that under.
It's funny, the opening up the first half total at 24 with a tiny bit of extra vig on the over. The books had to know that the over would get hammered at that number, and it did. The 24.5 now heavily juiced. All the other spots have gone to 25 or 25.5.
Yo, Marco, welcome to the channel. If this is your first time hanging out, capping these games with us, man, it took you too long to get in here. I appreciate you, dude.
Yeah, Marco, thank you so much. Thank you so much for rocking with us. All right, a lot of work still to do, but a great base for us, as after this weekend's games, there will only be 3 left for us. Mac Beavers, Elliot Jameson, Harold Williams, Spenny Penny Bombs, Marco Tedesco. Thank you, guys. Dabby Cab, Blue Numbers, D. Jenkins, Dennis Garcia, Dougie Wise, Gorky, Dan's Rants. It's fun. Bill Green is in. What's so much fun about these shows is we do not have to agree with each other. And look at Mr. Belvedere with the first half draw at 10-1 in Bills Ravens is a fascinating spot. This is all about getting as much information as possible. And after you talk things out and say things out loud or reply in the chat to some of our thoughts and comments, then you find that conviction that maybe you needed to make a bet or a reason to stay off of a bet. This show has been so helpful for me. So helpful. Troy, what opportunity is for me to cap with you every week. It's I really, you never stop learning in this profession. I feel like this year that the consistency of my season is what's different than any before. There was never, I had a losing week, but I never had 2 bad weeks in a row. Like it was able to. I'm taking things to the next level in my NFL capping, and I can't wait for the opportunity to do it again next year. I thank you for a lot of the guidance that you've shown us. And make no mistake, for those of you watching, Troy is the expert on this show, and I am the host. And you've done a hell of a job, Troy. Chill Will, Textiles, Old E, thank you. Also to our producer, Jose Bouquet, who works tirelessly behind the scenes to make these videos look good and cut them up. And he's is enjoyable to work with him as anyone ever. I can message him at any time. I can message him at 3 a.m. and it'll be done by 8 a.m. It's the kind of guy he is. So thank you for all that you do, Jose. Troy, my friend, can you put a bow on our show and lead us into the future?
If anybody was, wondering, should I go to Palooza 4? Should I not? Well, just so you know this, you're going to get to see Jose challenged me to a basketball one-on-one game. So you'll get to watch that out there. That'll be trust me, you'll get you the price of admission with just that single game. And I doubt he'll step up to the table, so you might get let down, to be honest. But yeah, Jimmy, you gave me compliments. I appreciate it. It's good to hear. I don't talk, I have a very small circle, and the biggest part of my circle is right here with Pub Sports Radio. I truly believe in you, Jim. Obviously, like I tell you this all the time. I mean, a lot of what I do is predicated on your entire approach. You brought me to the dark side, and I fucking love it in the dark. And I just, all the cappers, heavy hitters in the chat. I mean, I can't even name. I just go up and read so many damn names of guys that I respect. And if I wasn't doing the NFL, I'd probably be a lot more lenient and be able to be talked off or on to certain situations. But the one thing is, like, I heavily doubt that anybody puts in the time I do in the NFL in terms of, getting on NFL Plus, basically not leaving any stone unturned. I put my heart in this shit, so it means a lot, and it hurts when you lose, and it's glorious when you win. It's a fucking beautiful thing. Jimmy, thank you for the opportunity. Pub Sports Radio, I say it every week. Best damn community in the industry. Can't wait to do it again next year. And for this divisional round, unlike the wild card round, for me, let's go out there and get this fucking cash.